Okay, this is a short video which is going to illustrate how we're going to take some survey variables and extrapolate them. These survey variables were for some enumerated areas. We would like to extrapolate their results to other enumerated areas with similar characteristics. Good, so here are our survey results. The raw results had columns above and so on, but now I've taken out only the variables we want to look at. These are the particular variables that we want to now extrapolate to other enumerated areas. If you look at the variables here, you can see that for particular enumerated areas, here we go, there's 4 samples for that enumerated area. Now that number of samples is too little to extrapolate to any other enumerated area. It's not very representative for samples. The first thing we're going to do is, I'm just going to remove this column here because it's not obvious how we got it, so I'm going to remove it first. So we have EA codes here. However, now we typically work with small area layer, which is basically an accumulation of some EAs. So to get the small area layer code, which is what we want to use to get our survey results by, I'm going to open up SpatialXL and show you a new function to do that. Good. So now we've opened up and this data was added as a layer automatically before. So what I need to do now is I need to calculate for each EA here its small area layer code, which I'm going to use for my extrapolations. To do that, I can just use the join function, join layers function. I could load another layer here, or I could just join straight to a shapefile. So I have a shapefile of those enumeration areas. Here it is. So it's enumeration areas and it's got the SAL code in that shapefile. So I'm going to open that, use that shapefile to do my join. So I'm going to join this data here in this sheet to some data in that shapefile. All I'm going to do now is specify what is the key and the link. So the link is, you can link on many columns. We only need one column to link on in this case, which is EA code. That's the code in the shapefile that matches this EA code. And then what we want to use or bring back into our workbook is this SAL code. There you go. Having just done that, I just say join. There we go. It's now joined it. And we can look at the results over here. You'll see it would have added a column here. There we go. There's my cell code. I want to move that column more in, so let me just first make it a nice size. I'll just delete this blank one here, which was in our data, so I did not exclude it. So we want to put it just after the EA code, insert code cells. Here we go. So now we've got our cell code here to work with our stuff further. Okay, I'm just going to save our work. Now we're going to use a new function where we're going to summarize this data per some category that applies to our SAL. And then we're going to extrapolate based on that category to all other EAs in the area. Or SALs actually. So to do that, we're going to add a layer which gives us all the small area layers with some categories. So let me just load that data. Okay, I'll open it. So in our demographics, we've got segmentation. So basically we've got a segmentation workbook here, which I'll bring in as a layer just because I don't want to have it in Excel necessarily. So bring it in as a layer. It's a non-data layer, so I must just specify that, otherwise there will be a complaint on this side. And I'll just open it. Okay, good. We didn't choose a cell range. Let's just query a workbook for the cell range. I should have chosen which one. Good, so it's automatically populated for us, and that's fine. We'll take that as a cell range. There we go, now it'll load successfully. Good. So we've got 15,000 samples, approximately 4 samples per EA, and in our segmentation, you can view what it looks like. We've got 84,000 small areas. Let's just look at the data that we've got for that. What we put in, so there we go. So there we have the SAL code, because that's all we're working with. And what we've done for segmentation purposes is for each of these small areas, we've got some variables: dominant language, dominant group, male advantage, in other words, percentage of male over female, dominant age, dominant income, percentage that have got grade 7 and above, and all these various criteria. Okay. What we've done is we've put some extra variables which we think are probably more discriminatory for the kind of survey that we're looking at here. And this is whether most people will have refrigerators, most people have electric gas or stoves in those EAs, most people have vacuum cleaners, most people have washing machines, and so on. So those are criteria that we can use to get a signature or a profile for these particular EAs. And we can use those to help us then do our extrapolation. Here we have dominant access to internet, whether they have from home, no access, and so on. It gives us another thing. Okay, good. So to do the survey extrapolations, we'd like to get these survey results extrapolated back to the segmentation here, ideally. And we've got a tool to do that. Extrapolate Survey. So what it takes in your survey layer, which will be the one that we've got here, the Excel workbook layer. Now the survey works. It's going to summarize, well, it's going to extrapolate by what, and that's the area key here, the area that we're working with. So the area key we're working here now is that's cell code, because we're going to extrapolate to cell codes over here. Okay. The extrapolation layer will be segmentation. We want to add to that layer the predicted survey results. And again, there's this small area, it's the code there, small area layer. Now we have to decide what columns are our values that we want to actually work with and extrapolate. There's quite a few of them there, so luckily I can just do this. I could say check all and just uncheck those I don't want, which is these here. Now these variables must be numeric. They must be numeric variables, and there they are. So we've got all of them. It's going to work with those. Now the next step we need to do is decide what profile of EA are we going to do our summary by, so that we can extrapolate back to that same profile. So what I'm going to do is, a good profile for this data seems to be whether they have a refrigerator, gas stove, cleaner in the majority, whether they have computers in the majority, satellite TV in the majority, and DVD player in the majority. We'll take those criteria there as our criteria, basically our segmentation criteria. So that's the kind of segmentation we're looking at. So let's first of all get an idea of what the segmentation looks like. So we're not going to extrapolate straight away. We just want to do the calculation first. I'm going to click calculation only, and I'll choose extrapolate. There it's going to tell me that if we do this kind of breakdown, we're getting, let's see how many categories are we getting. We're getting about 28 categories of small areas. And these are the numbers of our surveys that are in these various categories. So we see a lot of the surveys are in that particular first category there. Basically, it's yes, no of these various items. So and there are the totals over here. So what we can do, if we decide that is too few categories, well then we can click off, say, one of these here. I'll do a re-extrapolate, and we'll do a count now. And we see here now I've got 19 categories. So that's even less. So if you want to have more categories, then maybe we think it'll be better to have more. Let's cast, it looks like a very good discriminating factor. We put back DVD player, and I think TV or landline should read, landline rather, would be a very, very discriminating category. So let's try this. And if we look over here, count, we're getting 50 categories. Now, the thing about that, the 50 categories though, is we're getting low sample rates, see there, for some of the categories, but others have fair amounts, 40s and so on. But maybe this will suffice for our current exercise, because those low sample rates, EAs, maybe won't be so important. Actually, let's just take out the DVD player and just try again and just see what the sample rates look like. Maybe that's a bit better. So we're going to take out DVD player. Count. Gives us 41, and there are not that many with low sample rates. All the rest go up higher. Okay, good. So we're going to take this signature, this of our EAs, as our signature we're going to use to do our extrapolation with. So if we are happy with this particular extrapolation, we going to now take off just the calculate only. We're going to say extrapolate. This is going to add these value columns like that to the appropriate column in our segmentation layer here, to the appropriate small area, the same values for each small area with the same signature. And it's going to populate it all the way down across these 84,000. Well, let's go ahead and do it. Oh, so okay, it does not have these columns in that data set to copy these values to, so we can just click this button up here which says add values to columns of extrapolation. So I'll do so. This gives me a warning. Now it's done, so now I can extrapolate. And it takes about a minute or two to get the 84,000 values extrapolated. Okay, good. And so it's calculated and it extrapolated the values. If I want to play around here further, I can literally run it again, but just recopy the values across to that layer. So what I'm going to do now, the job is done. I'm just remember the columns I used here, but that's fine. I can just take a snapshot of this. So I know those are my criteria I was using to do the extrapolation with. Small areas with this kind of the common signature will get the common extrapolation. Okay, good. So let's look at our data here. We can go into our segmentation layer here where we added the data. There we go. So we've of course got all our criteria over there still to be used if you want for various analysis, but they're all our variable values all the way through, extrapolated. So there's quite a few columns, and it's 84,000 rows. Okay, very good. So that's extrapolation done. Of course, now typically we do not want to just work with these values here. Just one comment here. You'll notice that we had a column called V866, and it was repeated. If you see in our data above here, it's repeated 4 times. So what we need to do is, because our software does not like to have the same name for a column, it gave them names here. It just added a 1 on the first, 2 and 3. Then there's 867, 867.1, so those are groups of variables. Okay, but what we want to do in our final report on this data is get the dominant answer out of each group. Okay, so there are various ways we can do it, but we've got some nice tools that we've added to SpatialXL where we can actually just extract data from a layer, the data we want, and so on. And I'm going to be illustrating that next. Now we're going to take this data we've extrapolated, and we're going to make a new layer from it using the dominant values in these fields. So for these variables here, like this V866 variable, which was repeated, that's why it's got this 1, 2, and 3 after it. For those 4 values, you want to find the dominant one and report that. We don't need the numbers themselves. To do that, we can very easily just create a new layer using the features here of SpatialXL. So what I'm going to do, go into Data, Add Layer, and we're going to call this layer Extrapolation. Alright, I'm going to the data for this layer. Columns we're going to want the small area layer code. We're going to want to know the dominant 866 value. It will be a string because it's going to be a column name. We're going to want the dominant, dominant 866. We want the dominant 867 and the dominant 868. And we can go now and go through all the fields. For this illustration, I won't do all of them. I'll just do these just to make it simpler. So those are the fields we want. Now the new thing in this version of SpatialXL 7.608 and above version is there's an initialization tab here for this new layer. In here we can specify a script which we'll use to pull the values from whatever layer we choose and pre-process them before putting them into this new layer. So what we want to do is we want to get the first thing we want to do is we want to insert a column to set the value of the cell, and the cell we want that to come from the cell column there. And this is JavaScript, so just terminate your statements with a semicolon. And the next column we want to do is going to be this dominant 866. Well, there's a calculation we can put in for that, and it's called the maximum column. And in this calculation, you just specify the columns to choose which the maximum column is from. So it's going to be V underscore 866. There we go to the end of the line, and a semicolon as usual, and we'll do the next one for the D8667. Again, similar calculation, insert calculation, there's a template for us. Maximum column, we can put in our column names. Let's just neaten this up a bit here. Good. This one is 867, and we saw what it did to the column names there. First of all, 867. There we go. Terminate that. Semicolon. Good. And our last column here. So it's insert set column. There you go. And in the place where you need to put the value for it, we can put our calculation. Let's make this pretty. It's calculation we're putting in our column, and it's maximum column. Eight, 6, 8. Here we go. Let's put in our semicolon. There we go. So that's our script to basically initialize the data in this new table, this new layer, this new table we're trying to create. And we're initializing it from the segmentation layer. We're just copying those fields. And we're doing calculations on the fly to do that copy. Now what you can do, you can save this script into a file if you want to be able to be loaded later with the open option here. So I will do that just in case we need to look at it again. Put it in the desktop, and I'm going to call it extract. There we go, so that's been saved. So we can reuse it again if I've got any errors in this. Okay, good. So I've set up my column, my new thing. It's called extrapolation. There's its data. There its columns are, and I can say OK. And now when it's refreshed, we can see there's our layer. There's all these small areas, and it has their dominant, those fields in. We can go into view data, look at them. There's our particular fields. So how about we can color now by, just as a quick test here, we can color by, we can do that dominant 866 and see what, choose unique values. So they're the various values. Those which don't have any will be green. And there we go. And there we go. So there's a very quick way of getting these results done. Now this file here, we've made it, it's got geometry now as well. So now we can actually save that as a shape file or SView file, whatever we want. And there we go. Or even we can do all kinds of things and put themes on it and so on and save it as a layer if you want. But there we go. It's been extrapolated and using those particular criteria. And there the results are.